But I just want to just briefly introduce, since no one knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, my real name is Jason Parch, and I write as David Liang, and I'm here from the internet. I'm the senior editor of the comedy site crack.com, which at least a couple of you claim to have been to the last time. Okay. That we do, what's it?
We feel like we're kind of like,
oh yeah,
so
you were freaking.
we're going to go back.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Just take care of my baby.
But Crank does about 100 million page views a month. I think we did 105 million in March to about 7.5 million unique users, which makes it one of the top 5 comedy sites on the planet. And I actually do that full time, editing a website, writing poop jokes from home. But the reason I'm here also is I wrote a horror novel she mentioned called John Dies at the End. It was originally published on the internet for free. And from there, self-published, and then from there sold the film rights, and from there got a hardcover deal with St. Martin's Press that's now available in bookstores nationwide. So that's the reason they asked me to be here, because I've got an experience that's a little bit different than the other writers, because it's kind of an untraditional way that...
And it worked. Don't you love it when an untraditional plan works? Except it wasn't a plan. We were just trying to get the stuff out there to people. They just, hardcover book contracting. Yeah, we were a little punchy this morning. Sorry. Jazzing. Jenna Oliver, obviously. I have self-published. I've published for the small press. That's my Time Rover series, which is my way of explaining those are time travel shapeshifters and Jack the Ripper. So that always gets people interested. And I'm currently contracted with St. Martin's. I'm writing a young adult urban fantasy series set in Atlanta where I get to turn demons loose in downtown Atlanta. I make 5 points Demon Central, for those of you who live in the area.
That's a true story.
That's not already the case?
Yeah, well, it's because of the holes. You know, there's steam pipes and all that. They've got all the holes, and I'm looking at these holes and I'm going, man, that'd be so cool if demons lived
What a
there.
So you're doing nonfiction now?
Yeah, I'm doing nonfiction. And then the city is bankrupt. So somebody said, you sure this isn't nonfiction? I'm going, all right. So that comes out in January. It's the first book in the series. It's called The Demon Trapper's Daughter. And though it is designed for 14, it is 14 and up. So adults will find it a rather fun urban fantasy. My hero is a southern Georgia boy, a good old boy. And you should see that. And they always want the hunky angel people. Hunky angel people now. It's sort of like sparkly vampires in my mind. So I think what we want to do, and I think probably if you're good with this, David, is we'll just start talking as a group where we think, because you guys are obviously readers and you're obviously writers, or you wouldn't be here, and you get an idea where you guys think publishing is going, where we see it inside the moat, as it were, as if we can, like we had a crystal ball, and just get an idea of where everything is headed, because it is so in flux right now with the concepts of, well, okay, 10 years ago would we have assumed, or even 15 years ago would we have assumed that there would be books on these things? Okay, that's changing the market. A lot of things are changing the market. I'm going to throw it out to you first. And this is just totally throwing it out to you. What do you think? Well, we might as well start with the ebook readers, because those are the biggest dynamic in the publishing world right now. Where do you think they're going to go? I think they were saying there were like 5 million units of ebooks sold, 5 million actual readers sold last year, so they're becoming a dynamic.
I've been holding off on buying one because I've been waiting to find out what's going to be the ebook reader, because I kept hearing about this.
VHS type situation.
I kept hearing about this,
Who's
these tablet computers, will they work as ebook readers? But I gotta say, one day I got stuck on a plane. I was flying to Los Angeles. I'd meet with my bosses, and got stuck on the tarmac for like an hour. And the girl next to me, who had brought nothing to read, pulls out her iPhone, still has a signal, and I guess she had the Kindle app or one of the mini e-reader apps on there, and dropped the book on there and started reading it. And then when I saw that, I thought, oh, okay, Because that thing, okay, there's like 5 million of these in the world. Yeah, there's 100 million of
Right,
those iPhones.
right.
And in about 3 years, if you don't have a smartphone with a big screen on it, that's the equivalent of having like one of those crank phones from like the 20s. And so it will be every person in the Western world will have it. There will be literally 1 billion smartphones in the world. And all of them, without exception, at any moment, as long as there's somewhere with a signal, they can drag and drop any book in the world of the 3 million titles, however many are published in ebook format at the time. I think that probably, I think avid readers will have these, bigger screen, prettier, easier to read, easier on the eyes. But I think for everybody else, I think you're looking at an ocean of people who suddenly, and who grew up reading, doing most of the reading on a phone in the form of text messages and Facebook updates and Twitter, and they're used to reading on a screen. If that girl, if she had asked me to make the case for, like, well, you should have brought like a paperback instead, based on what?
How do you
She
defend
has 2 million paperbacks. She can go buy it a second. No, what you should have done, you should have had somebody cut down a tree and then mulch up the tree and then through a very expensive process flatten it out and then print it with ink and then glue it together, and you should have brought that on the plane.
You're just the one.
And I think that we're sort of in the era of the printing press, where there was, when that first came out and people thought of the printing press, it's this crude, ridiculous way. Well, every book is the same. It doesn't have the feel of the books now, where each one is handwritten by a monk and with a pen made of bone. You can't substitute that. Each book's got its own personality because the monk's penmanship is different. You want to go to the stupid printing press thing that just cranks them out, where I now seeing that girl just drop a book, because I don't have an iPhone still, drop a book on there, that's what I felt like I was seeing, like, okay, this is the printing press, and not everybody understands that the world has changed.
The one thing I have held off getting an ebook, mainly because I still have I used to have a TRS-80, a Tandy.
Old school.
That's a big, black, I'm showing my age here, black floppy
I
disk.
had one.
Yeah, and you're younger, way younger than me. And what can I do with those discs? I can hang them up, I can throw them at the neighborhood cat. I can't do anything with them. I can't do an upgrade to bring those. I have a whole box of stuff that I've written from years ago that I can't upgrade. And so I'm not a Luddite. I love new obviously I have an iPhone. I love new technology. I'm using the dictate on here, what automatically makes what I dictate into an email. I mean, I've got Dante Alighieri and Pride and Prejudice on here, so I'm not a Luddite. But I'm leery until the market shakes out, that we know who's going to stay in it, and do I own the ebooks? Because there's been some issues with Amazon where they'll go, oh, sorry.
You'll own it next week.
And Amazon's totally off my list because of what they did in the Macmillan authors, but that's another whole conversation. But I'm not real sure because it's one more, pardon my, well, yeah, I won't say the word. It's one more thing I have to carry. Okay, and admittedly, if I have a book, I'm carrying a book, but I can jam a book in there, or I can put it on, as you said, I can put it on here. Eyesight is sometimes an issue, but some of these ebook readers will allow you to put it up as a giant, blinder than bat type, and you can actually read them. But this is another expensive something for me to carry. And so I'm a little leery of that. But until we know what technologies or what ebook readers are going to settle out, and the other thing is, as I mentioned before the panel started, I read so voraciously, I don't like the majority of what I read. I'm so fussy that there's only a few authors that I will actually buy the books. And once I do, then I buy their whole series, and I usually buy their audiobooks at the same time. But it would be a waste of money for me to keep buying ebooks because I read them so fast that I'm going, I don't want to read that person again. So what do I do with it? Well, what was it they were saying? Was it the Nook that you could share them with friends? That you can actually loan it out? You can loan a copy out?
You can share it once, and you can't read it at the same time.
Yeah, you can't read it at the same time. It's sort of like a library book.
I think Sony's doing the same thing with theirs.
Which is a neat idea, If you want to read a book, I can say, okay, I can loan you my copy. Though as an author, I would like to see you pay royalty for that.
Yeah.
But then I have relatives who take one copy and hand it all the way around the law office. So I mean, so I can't complain too much. But So I'll throw that out to you guys. Where do you think the ebook readers are going? We'll just ask them and see.
Jenna, what are you seeing going on with ebooks in libraries? Can you go to the library and check out an ebook? What's the
can.
relationship?
You can do that. There are certain numbers, some of the libraries limit how many times they're out, and then they have to buy a new ebook. Because if you think about it, these books will only tolerate X number of loans out before they fall apart. And then they have to buy a new one, which authors love, and so publishers. Ebooks, they can go forever. So I think that what they're doing is limiting a certain number of circulation times, or circulation numbers, and then they have to purchase another copy. But you know, I like the idea. The problem with my local library, they put things out and it has to be used in a Microsoft format, and it's not compatible with my iPhone because of the DRM. And I'm going, okay, I just spent 2 years ago I spent $299 for this. I'd like to put the ebook on here. Can't do it. So that's another problem. But yeah, the libraries are starting to do ebooks.
So I found that for me it's been very helpful to have the ebooks in that even though I've never bought an ebook, but I read a lot of them. Not illegal or anything. What I do though is as I've got the Kindle. Yeah, no, guys. So no, hear me out though. So I have the iPhone just like you, and I've got the Kindle app. And what I do is, if something interests me, then I'll go and I'll download the free sample, and I'll do that. I probably have 30 of them on my phone. And a lot of times, you know, like you're in the bookstore and it's like, I gotta have this book. And you read it and you're like, I can't believe I just spent $30 in this hardback, you know? And you know, it's like, oh, that cover was much better than the story or whatever. And so what I'll do is I'll read the first chapter or two, whatever the sample is that they give you. And then if I like it, then I go and I buy a hardback, or I actually buy the book, you know, and sort it out that way. And if it wasn't so good, then that was it, and there was no investment on my part. And I found that for me, has worked very well. And actually, I probably end up buying more books that way.
I think that's what authors think. You were doing that with your sampling. People go out and read as you posted your thing. I do the samplers. You have to, because it's like going into Costco and they go, "Hi, would you like to try the Vienna, alligator sausage?" And they hand it to you, and you taste it, and you go, "Hey, that's not bad," and you buy some. You got to do that, especially with the cost of books and the fact that people have a finite space for storing books, so they've got to find what they want. I think you have to offer that. Now, I know there's a lot of folks out there saying don't offer your stuff out there for free because you'll never make it back, and he's living proof that's a lie. And or let's say living proof that the rules can be broken.
Yeah, and there's only so much you can do to restrict, like the thing with the libraries where they have them expire after so many, where the publisher makes them expire. That's an artificial rule they put on there. I mean, a book physically falls apart. You can see the book's falling apart. They need a new one. The fact that they have an electronic copy that would be eternal if they allowed it to be, and they have to arbitrarily say, no, this will fall apart after you've loaned it 50 times. You can only do so much of that. You can only do so much artificial scarcity, when in reality the information is there and it kind of wants to be free, and if you try too much to restrict it, eventually people start to figure out ways to.
They go out of their way to do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it becomes a cause. We're gonna try to
Figure out
make sure this gets out in the open.
So it's the same conversation that because people plainly still pay for stuff. People still go see movies, people still buy video games, people still buy software, people still buy books by the millions, people still buy DVDs, TV shows, DVDs, they buy stuff constantly, even with the piracy out there. So you sort of have to say, in this new world, if they want to sample your work and they're scared of putting up the money, if they're not confident enough in your work to put an investment in it up front, they'll get it. So, if they want it, if they have that desire, they'll get it, and they'll sample it, but you have to believe that there's got to be ways, because this is the same conversation they have in the music industry, in Hollywood, everywhere, about are still ways to get people to pay. People are willing to pay, but because things are not scarce anymore, because there's so much media now, and there's so much on the internet that's free, they have to get a certain amount of free stuff before they feel like they've come out on the right end of the deal.
And the goodwill you build up by having that kind of attitude.
And they
makes
sort of
them a lot
demand
more
that.
enjoy the idea. Well, I really want to buy this guy's work because he obviously doesn't want to try and, be the Gestapo and restrict everything.
Yeah, and so the sort of the power in that relationship has changed, but I was an absolute nobody, and I got this novel just by people's, in online word of mouth, which is what I got a session just on promoting something on the internet. And I was an absolute nobody. I had no credentials, but just the people, hey, I like this. And on the internet, the power of people to recommend things to each other is unfathomable, because if they can Twitter a link to my novel and someone clicks on it and they're not getting an ad, they're getting the novel, just like that. And so the novel was the sales message. I didn't have to tell them to come up with clever ways to convince people. Like with a movie, they cut a trailer that totally deceives you what the movie's about. Like there'll be some slow movie, and they'll piece together like all the action scenes in 2 minutes, and it looks like this slamming action picture, and then you go watch it and realize it's like, and it's all about kind of like tricking people into seeing the content. But on the internet, you build up a different kind of trust with people, because they can show you in a second 1,000 friends, 1,000 Facebook friends. Go read this thing, it's hilarious. All right, so maybe only 10% of them actually follow through and read, but that's 100 people. And maybe only half of those actually willing to pay money to buy it. That's 50 or 25 people. Compare that to 30 or 40 years ago. One kid is not going to loan your novel to 25 different people. He'll loan it to maybe one person, and that person will lose it.
The potential audience is much larger and much more immediate.
Yeah, and that's the trade-off.
What do you think I look at the music industry, and they went through something that I think eventually we're going to go through. This doesn't seem like we've got to the point where we've got a critical mass of ebook owners where there's so many of us and so many of these people out there that they're going to break all the rules and make their own version of Napster. You know what I mean? Like, not that there isn't stuff out there already, there is, but for example, right? I mean, I have all the ebooks. I didn't buy them for the Wheel of Time, but I own.
I'll take them outside.
I own 3 versions of all the Wheel of Time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that Tor and everyone has it made. I bought all the books and bought all this, and I'm, and then like I have the ebook that sometimes I use to search things, and so it's that mix of how do you not turn off in the next 10 years, how do you not turn off really big fans of books that are spending lots of money, but also want a certain amount of convenience. They don't want to double, triple, quadruple purchase.
The honest truth, I think, is publishing is any other industry will look at how to market stuff at a synergy. You sell frying pans, you sell cookbooks, college cookbooks, cooking for college students. You sell them separately, put them together. When a kid comes to college, they need a skillet, and here's his cookbook. You put them together, you price them a little higher. Why can't you buy a print version and an e-version put together in a package?
I
Or print and audio.
to the Blu-ray packs these days.
Yeah.
Where you
DVD,
get
digital
Blu-ray
copy.
disc, the DVD, and the digital.
Yeah.
So
Why not?
the same way, why can't you
Why can't
buy
they
that
buy one?
book
There's
no
and
reason
off
you
the
can't.
back the link
And
to
that's what I think
download
of.
the
Yeah, I think that's
ebook?
one way it's going to have to go, because this whole ebook thing, the scarcity, the kind of artificial scarcity. Eventually, when people care enough, I mean, like you said, if they care enough now, it doesn't matter, right? You can get the ebook for any of these books
And some of them,
free, and if they want it, they can get it. So, so it becomes tough, because how do you pay those people if you can just get free stuff?
So
So
it's like piracy, though. I mean, you're still going to have 90+% of the people that read books are probably still going to pay for it.
right, I mean,
There's still gonna be people that don't.
You have an acceptable loss situation.
but I think that you have a lot of mixed hats. Like, I don't think you have like just pirates and then really honest people paying for everything. You know what I mean? I own,
there's a mix.
I have jazz
I mean, like-
discs from back in the day that have Red Alert, and all sorts of games, but I also have copies I bought. It's that mix of like, I have some music that I don't think I ever paid for, but I have a ton of music that I did. It's that kind of mix of those people that, and maybe it's myself, that you think you deserve access to a little bit free because you're really supporting the industry at the same time with a lot of the money you have already. So it's,
There's so many different things that are happening here. For instance, I live in New York City, right? I've got an apartment that's the size of somebody's large 1987 Plymouth station wagon trunk, you know? I buy a book, I have to get rid of a book.
Yeah.
Because I have this much space for books. Now, as an e-book, as an e-reader, it's, you know, it's wonderful that I can get on the subway, pop out my iPhone and read. It used to be when I bought a book, and I'm an inveterate reader, and I love paperbacks, and I'm 60 years old, so I grew up in bookdom. You know, and I grew up with, you know, a family that loves books. And I love to open up a book. You know, you know, when I went to Robert Jordan's last signing, I had it all set up, and I had my music that I was going to listen to, Brendan Lackton, and I opened up the book, and I read the first, you know, pages of it, and the chills just came down, you know. At the same time, if I buy a book, I got to get rid of a book. If I have an e-book reader, I don't have to worry about that. I used to have a hierarchy. So bad, the book was so bad that I never finished it and it went into the trash. The book was good enough that I finished it and left it on the subway. You know, and by the way, in Japan they have little bookshelves, but in many of the subway stations where you can leave a book and pick a book. You know, which I think is wonderfully cool. So, you know, and then if it was, you know, a little bit better, I would give it to a friend. You know, and if it was really, really good, I would keep it. With an ebook, I don't have to worry about that.
You know, and the thing from an author's point of view, the piracy thing is really troubling. And I've had discussions with folks who claim they are pirates, and they said, look, you've got to understand that we steal books. That's what they're doing. Sorry. Yeah, we steal books, but we also buy books. And I go, okay, but I come from a household where my husband's a software engineer. So if somebody isn't paying for that software, we're not eating. And I'm also really touchy about copyright. But I also understand it's a real gray area. But I do try whenever I find somebody who has a friend of mine's books up, and I know that they're struggling, and I know they're trying to make their rent, or they're trying to support. I know one lady who's got a disabled husband, and she is the breadwinner. And I look at every single one of those books that's been pulled and not paid for, and I know it comes right out of her pocket. Now the other folks who are making tons of money, yeah, they probably would like a little bit more ton of money, but. And so I see the gray area there, and I think recently one of the industry guys, I think it was one of the people at Macmillan, said what we really have to do is make sure that the reader can get to the content in any way that they want it, that is, you know, within legal means, at a price they can afford, and make it easy for delivery. And that's the, you know, even though I don't like Amazon, they've made the shopping experience very easy. I mean, you're all signed up, you go in one click and bang your butts out of there with more books than you planned. So that's, yeah, it's just another free shipping. Oh my God, free shipping costs you $30 for the extra free shipping, but hey. So I think that's something the industry needs to start looking at, rather than looking at just hidebound as this is a book and it has to be printed, it has to go to the bookstores. They have to look at different ways of getting those books out there.
Amazon Prime is genius, by the way.
And the devil.
And I've removed all their links. They're permanently persona non grata with me, but.
Well, I understand. That's just the free shipping, and I bought way too many things. So.
It's just that, because my book, obviously, with St. Martin's was one of the ones that went down when Amazon had their cat fight with Macmillan, and when their response, if you're not familiar with the situations, they pulled all of Macmillan's books off Amazon. And that's half my sales.
Yeah.
I'm from the internet, so that's where people know to buy the book. And so that was, you know, that month's, like, the royalties for that month was.
You were collateral.
I mean, it was a whole week where they just, and you know, they just thoughtlessly did it because they don't, you know, like, we don't care. You're simply the person who writes the book. It's not like we can't do it without you. You know, we could probably get some software to write the book if we had to. But it's too easy for me to get embroiled in those, in like the business, and talking about the business model and how the business model's changed and the publishing's changed and the pricing structure's changed. That is so grossly understating the point. The world has changed. Okay, it's like the opening lines of the Lord of the Rings movie. The world has changed. I can feel it in the air. The nature by which humans experience, content, and ideas of each other has changed forever. Probably more significantly than at any point in our evolution as a species with the internet. And our ability to share ideas and to talk to each other. All this we're talking about, how much you can charge for an ebook, how much royalty is going to be, how much you're going to fall, are tiny, tiny little things at the periphery of what is a fundamental change in the way by which you can tell stories to each other, by which cultures can move across languages and across peoples and across time and space. There's nothing, I've yet to meet a person who fully understands what it will mean in a few years, as I mentioned, like 3 years from now, when smartphones will be ubiquitous, and that's the only type of phone you'll be able to buy. When if you walk into Verizon and say, I want one of the old-fashioned phones, they'll just laugh at you, like, what? Why? Every phone will have a screen on it. Every phone, we're talking about 4G networks that run at 100 megabits per second, so any phone can drop movies onto it. Any phone can play games. Every kind of media that we've thought up, you'll have in your pocket. You can buy it anywhere you get a signal. Any kind of media that's ever been created through the history of mankind in any format will be in your pocket. Not 30 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I'm scared to death that the publishing industry doesn't fully understand, in the same way that when somebody invented this thing called an MP3 file, when years ago, when to have you had a song in your computer, that's like a 70 megabyte file because it was a WAV file. And somebody invents MP3s that sound crystal clear, and it's 3 megabytes, and you can download those in a few minutes. And the music industry plainly did not understand what that meant. That someday you would have this little paper thin thing you can put in your pocket that would hold 18,000 songs on it. And now you do not need that separate thing. And that's why when we talk about e-readers, there's some technology guru who had a great quote about there's a maximum to the number of devices people want to carry, and that number is 1. And that's coming. There won't be a need for anything else. So they have to figure out how to make that work financially now. And they have to realize that's coming. To complain that people don't value content as much, that they expect a certain amount of content to be free or very, very low cost, that they expect to be able to sample content at their leisure anytime they want, that they expect it to be available all the time. To complain that people have the wrong attitude about content, you might as well be complaining that the ocean is too salty. It's a pointless. I don't like the idea of making drastically less money on my book. I put a gigantic amount of work into it, but the world has changed. The printing press is here. The books are not on scrolls anymore, and so that's.
Well, I'm thinking the way that the publishers are going to have to go, because as you said, after you're used to an iPhone and an iPad and all the really beautiful, gorgeous stuff, color, oh my God, color. That's what got me with this thing. I was going to buy a BlackBerry, and I touched the screen, and I started scrolling on it. And the Apple virus went into my veins, and we were done. I bought it. And how does this compete? Now, I love paper books, not necessarily the smell of them, because they don't smell that good. But I love paper books. But actual dead tree books. I think what they're going to have to do is create what they call, and they're just starting to come out, are called books. They are video books. And they are an ebook with additional content. It's sort of like the director's cut. We add all the extra stuff that wasn't on the first DVD, but you wanted to sell the complete DVD of all 3 Star Wars events, so you can watch more stuff with Jawas, So, and a book has things where you can go out and if there's music that plays in certain sections of the book, or you can choose different alternate endings, you can take different paths. Like rather than deciding whether my heroine does this at this point, you go, what do you want to do? I want my heroine to do this. Let's see where the book takes it. Now that's a buttload of work for a writer. It's much like gaming. But and also then there's pictures. If you're in Calcutta, there's a beautiful background in Calcutta. I mean, it's like a director's cut. It's an additional thing, and I swear that's where books are headed, because we've got all these lovely little devices that we want to use, and so we want something that's dynamic and I still love dead trees, and I guess lots of dead
More
trees.
interactive stories.
Right.
I get the little fellow back here. He's fine.
Quick question, may not turn into a quick answer. How do you see that changing authors? And my point in this, my idea is you're both touching on something that I think is really interesting, is that books are the slowest form of media to change. You know, going from handwritten to the printing press, which everybody called the devil, to going to massive, to going to print on demand, to going to publishing on websites like we talked about yesterday. You know, the idea, the more I thought about it, and I went to Cracked yesterday just to kind of see what was out there, is nowadays, especially the younger generations that are coming up, they want the massive amounts of information that they can pick and choose what they want, and they want a website that's going to have, you know, satirical comedy, news, you know, links to other good stuff, shopping, and, you know, serious, you know, sections of books or sections of things that they can read. That's what they're interested in. And I've been playing with an idea that eventually, you know, in a demon-infested world or something, there won't be any real authors anymore. There will be nobody who has a beginning, middle, end plot line where you say, you know, and you said yesterday, you got a lot of reader feedback, and that helps you fix some little things, some little errors. But what if that reader feedback then changes your entire plot? What if that, I mean, do you see any pressure from publishers or pressure from the industry to try to get writers to change, to be more giving to the consumers, a lot like the TV industry is, a lot like you see these musicians like Britney Spears and Kesha who are just a production? I mean, there's nothing there.
That could be done, and you could have an author. Well, they could do it now, where it's like, let's just cobble together something with you know, vampires are hot right now, and so let's get some zombies in there. Or attacked by zombies. You know, there's nothing to stop it, and I'm sure the barrier for entry is lower, that you could do that. But in my mind, if there's people that like that, I mean, it's what I mentioned earlier to somebody, is that, or I may have said it here, I forgot what I said, but that, you know, the way that we think of like teenagers or teenage girls and how they've done more reading than I did in school, when, you know, when my room was full of books and nothing but books. Books were what I had instead of friends, right? But they read, and all their reading it's, you know, not as in depth, because they're reading magazine type stuff, they're reading Facebooks and their accounts of the friends, they're reading Twitter feeds, they're reading 100 text messages a day, they're reading their favorite blogger, and their blogger may not be talking about anything particularly in depth, but they do read, and there's millions of them, and I would like to tell those people stories. I'll bring it to them, and if it means having a format of, the book format where by God it stops and shows them the spooky room, that instead of spending all hours describing it, if I can reach those people, tell them a story, relay them a theme, tell them something about people, about the world, about humanity, and relate to it in a way that they're used to seeing, because there's a generation who's grown up reading on screens and screens only now. And they're getting to be in their teens, and the only reading they've done is on screens. They literally may never have, outside of school, when they were forced to, have, for recreation, picked up a book, paid for it, and read it on the page, because they'd be a dork if they had a book. But they're not a dork to have an iPhone. So, in the course of reading about, you know, this gossip column or whatever, and then here's this fictional story about this gossip columnist, so maybe it's very easy to transition into reading that, and it's on the same device, and maybe it's not, you know, presented just as today. You don't think so much of albums, and you think more in terms of individual tracks because of the iTunes era. And so whereas before you think of the 70s and like when the LP format was first invented, they first came with the idea of doing like a concept album with like 25 tracks on it, and it's got a story on it. And that format, you know, has changed now to where it's individual songs. Same thing. Maybe you're not selling them a novel. Maybe you're selling them a chapter every week, forever. Like a TV show. Why not? Why is, because the only reason the novel exists is because, well, stack of papers, like, you can't have one like this tall, because that's, you know, that's ridiculous to carry around. So there's so much of what we think of as the novel format only exists because of these completely artificial limitations. Pages are a certain thickness. Costs, you know, printing presses are made to print things are certain, that it can only be so big before nobody wants to carry it anymore. I don't think people fully understand, because so much of what they want to do in ebooks, it's like, how can we take that exact thing And we'll just take that exact identical thing, same length, same look, and we'll just put it on a device. It's like, no, you're not, you're just beginning to understand what's possible here. Like, you have no concept how many of the barriers have been taken down. And it's like a dog in a yard and the fence has been blown over. It's like, you know, he can sit there and think, wow, I can go like into the neighbor's yard. And I'm like, no, buddy, you can go to the whole world now. And it takes them a while to realize, oh, wait a second, there's like millions of other dogs I can be friends with out there. And it's slowly, and I feel like it's in that process of, because it's so limited and it's a black and white screen, and even it is remarkable, and I am probably going to wind up getting one for Christmas or the Barnes & Noble one. But even then, this is a Model A.
And, you know, I don't care how I get the content in front of the readers as long as they're reading. So whatever it takes, especially I write now for teens, so I have to plug into where they are. And they've gone from, well, publishing industry said teens don't read. Then along came this lady named J.K. Rowling and proved that actually teens read and adults read the same thing that teens read, and kids read. Whoa, now there's a concept, that scared them. And then along came Stephanie Meyer, who reproved the whole thing that both teens and adults will read the same stuff, and that teens will buy books that are like honking huge. So I'm thinking, you know, I think publishing has a tendency to say, they don't do this, and rather than saying how do we present content to them that they will do this or that they might like to do this. And let's see, I think one of these other fellows had a question first, and then no, go.
I had a quick follow-up, just
Oh,
real
okay.
quickly. Do you think that change in media is going to change the real quality authors that we've read? I mean, y'all both have books, have actual things that have a plot line that you've worked on, that you've developed.
Hopefully, yeah.
That I mean, you've put a lot of yourself into, and I'm thinking back to books that I grew up reading, you know, that were really classics, that where one person sat down and developed something that kind of, it created the postmodern world that we're living after now in writing, where there aren't happy endings and there aren't good things, and it doesn't go the way you want to. It makes you feel bad to try to follow along and have tricks played on you and have things happen to you that, you know, it really messes with your emotions, and you come out on the other side a bigger person, a better person. And now, especially if you draw it back to the music and movie industry, you don't have bands like Rolling Stones, and you don't have bands like the Sex Pistols, and you don't have bands like Pearl Jam being big out there. You have these individual people who have no support, who are the mouthpiece of a massive amount of people in the background saying, what do people like, how can we put it all together? I mean, do you have any fear as authors of losing that authority or that ability to pull people along the way that you want them to go?
I don't.
You still find those books compelling, though, the classics.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of people like you, and there always will be. If there's people like you who find it compelling, I mean, I think that the Sex Pistols are out there. Not the actual Sex Pistols, but the next one's out there, but they're out there with a Facebook account and a fan page, and they're giving away MP3s, and they're playing
MP3s on their site.
and they're playing in bars.
That's the
And they are able to reach fans all over the planet. Not people happen to wander into the bar they're playing, but people in Japan and in Korea and South Africa can grab those tracks just as somebody in New York, whatever scene they're on, can hear the music and appreciate it. And I mean, look around you. You came from New York. I'm here from Illinois. What brought us together? All right. Would this have been possible 30 years ago? For people to reach out and connect with each other, I don't think you can. I mean, you know, it's true that next group is not going to make as much money as Lady Gaga, but that is maybe the way it should be. But I would argue that as far as if you're a niche writer and you're writing weird things, you have more of an ability to find the people that like the weird things. And if you're a writer and your specific thing, like you write about unicorns that are also zombies. These are unicorns
Zombie unicorns?
they've died and they've been resurrected.
This is cool. You should write that.
But that's your thing. I now have the power to connect with every zombie unicorn fan. There may be 13 of them on the planet. I can find them all.
Now there's
Where before, if I had shot that to a publisher, they would have laughed me out of the room. But when I showed up with a book saying, hey, this thing, I'm a guy, I was working in a cubicle in an insurance company when I wrote this, understand. I was not connected with the publishing world at all. I had never published anything in print, but showed up at the door with 70,000 people who had read this thing. And suddenly, and for free, but suddenly there's all, oh yeah, that's something, you know, we could probably sell copies of that. Some of those people would have paid for it, wouldn't they? And I was the punk band version of that, you know. I didn't meet the right people and I didn't have the right friends, and it did not matter. I went right to the readers and titled my book, John Dies at the End. And that's not a marketable title, and it didn't matter, because I went right to the readers and then came there with the readers behind me and said, you know, this is what people like to read, and you know, and we came here because we specifically didn't care what you thought about it. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities there, but there will always be crap. Because there's always a market for crap. And I don't even resent that. I ate at a McDonald's on the way down here. I completely appreciate crap and the value of crap.
That's going to be extra crappy value meal, yeah.
Paperbacks used to be called paper TV.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's right.
Now you
And
see.
pulp.
No.
You're right in pulp.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is there's always been packagers, and they will look at current trends, and I won't mention the book in question, but I just heard from my UK editor that one of the books that's on the top of the YA charts was, and it's not Stephanie Meyer, so I'll take Stephanie Meyer, I'll take that off the plate so nobody thinks that. But it was put together by a packager who said, well, you know, Fallen Angels are big right now, what we need is this, and we're going to find the right author, it's the right age, the right demographic, and they put it out there, and it works. And so there's always packagers who will look at those trends and throw them together. I think the people, I have the greatest respect for those authors who go out on a limb and go in odd and weird ways, mostly because that's what I do. So that's why I respect them, because I know it's hard to work against the trends or taking a trend and then flipping it on its ear 180 degrees so that, you know, the reader gets in there going, yeah, this is going to be another damn Fallen Angel story. And all of a sudden it changes. And that's what the readers want. So I think there's always going to be, as he said, a fair level of crap, some really good stuff, and then there's always the package books, which are quite good.
And they got to create trends too, so you don't know what's going to happen. So
You never know.
maybe
They
some of the
try
weird
to, yeah,
stuff
they try
will
to bootstrap on other phenomena. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, sometimes it helps if your book is said, you know, if you love Stephanie Meyer, you'll love blah, or if you say, you know, and sometimes it doesn't help. You know, it's just other questions, folks.
The other thing is that it's so flexible. You know, I was thinking as you guys were talking of Eric Flint and his 1632, whatever that is. You know, where he started out with one novel of a small West Virginian coal mining town that gets plopped down back into the 100 Years' War in Germany. And that was the book, right? It sold very well. And then he got all of these other people writing him and saying, well, you should do this and you should do that with it. And then he started an online, basically, collection of short stories written by a myriad of people. And another collection of online articles about what would really be possible in 1632 and what wouldn't be possible in 1632, and how did you really make gunpowder in 1632. And so there's this vast majority of information. If you want to know about the 100 Years' War, go to Eric Flint's Ring of Fire website, and you will know more about the 100 Years' War in a very funny, entertaining, and you know, he's got high school kids that are becoming millionaires by developing foot pedal sewing machines. that they're selling all over 1632 Germany. You know, what a wonderful concept.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, I'm sure David's probably going to get into this afternoon. At 4 o'clock, how's that for a great fun? Is the reader wants a more than just the book experience, especially in young adults. They want to meet the authors. It was like Teen Reads did a survey, and I think it was like 80-some-odd% of the kids want to meet the authors in person. So if you're nervous about being around teens, that's not a good job for you. I'll be wearing my non-flammable underwear, I'm sure, but they want content. They want content. You go out to J.K. Rowling's site. You go out to Percy Jackson. All the different sites. They want something that's dynamic, changeable, that changes regularly. Unfortunately, most of my stuff is static, which we're working on, and trying to get something that there's additional content that feeds into the world that you've already created. So it's way beyond the good old days when you could just hand it and go, there you are, that's what you get.
And also the possibility to input into that.
And input into
because he's got this great big committee, and I'm sure that there's thousands of words that are submitted to them, and they publish the good ones, and they, and obviously the bad ones get thrown out. But
that's what Crank.com does, by the way. Everything's done on an open submission system. There's total strangers coming in, and what we found now, again, there's thousands who want to write for us, and you're picking out one a day. But this is based on the idea that the world is full of geniuses. They don't happen to, they're not professional writers, they're mechanics, they're cooks, they're whatever, but they have things to say and they're brilliant. And they've got insight, and and everyone's run into, some old guy pushing a mop who tells a hilarious story that has you laughing so hard you can't breathe. And I want to find those people and say, look, you don't have to transition from that to being a writer. Like, you have a way with words, you have a natural way of relating to people. We'll give you a place to tell people that. And I had, before on with my novel, I had a thriving message board on that site and had all these people there together. That element of the people talking to each other, and relating to each other and sharing, it becomes like what's happened here. It's where the fans get together, and that community, in terms of building a community of like fans or whatever, again, something else that 50 years ago, maybe you got fans scattered all over the country, and they're still scattered all over the country, but they're also all in one spot. And there's no substitute for that. And it's in that, getting that many people together, like-minded people together, creative people together, something magical happened that, again, did not used to ever happen in the human species.
Why do you think it's taken the publishing industry so long to take into account the Crack.com, or as I think about it since I'm a little older, the hotmail effect, which is you offer something for free so you have enough people, and that's how you go out making the internet. I mean, as many different models have been tried on the internet, right? The getting an audience, creating an audience with free content until the audience is large enough to sustain a business of sorts. I mean, it seems like, to me, I look at the next 20 years of publishing, and it's going to be lots of small individuals going out there offering their stuff for free and free and free and free and free until they can go, I have 500,000 readers, and then they go to a publishing company and say they actually want this book to walk home with, make one for them. You know what I mean? That, to me, that seems like it has to be this idea that, like you said, where you can, some random writer, you can just offer their book, and people are just going to buy it. With iTunes out there, it's just, I haven't bought a full album in, I don't know how long. I mean, I buy individual songs because I buy what I like, and I don't want crap. I don't want the other stuff. So,
right. And the way it used to be, where you had the hit song, and then like 4 pretty good songs,
right,
and then a cover, and then an instrumental, and then like a remix of the hit song.
right.
And then there's like the little, the insert thing where like the little skit where the rapper is talking to another rapper. And again, that's what I was trying to make clear. Is I don't think the music industry understood that they no longer had the ability to make us take whatever they wanted.
Right.
And they were very slow to come around on that. And at the same, you'd sink a lot of money into a hardcover book and you read the first chapter and realize man, this is exactly like the guy's last book. And in
Yeah.
fact, I already know who the killer is now, because it's the same thing, you know, and so, and you feel like, and there's not like a way to recoup that $30. I think that it's hard to, look, Crack used to be a magazine. This is the same Crack that used to be the Mad Magazine ripoff.
Oh, really?
The kid that had, okay. Well, the site's completely, it's the same brand, but it completely changed content. There's no more like the movie parodies or the comics, anything like that. But it's the same, it's a 50-year-old brand, right?
Huh.
They had a magazine that had folded, and this website kind of was born out of that because the company came along and bought it and inside the staff with like some writers from the internet. And to try to make something that could sustain itself, which now there's more people reading Crack the website than ever read that comic. The comic used to sell like 70,000 copies a month. We are now reaching 7.5 million separate human beings a month who are reading 100 million articles on it. But when the magazine folded and we started the site, a lot of old writers from the magazine were contacting us expecting to make magazine money. This is the internet. You have banner ads that pay at a rate of $1 per thousand. If you write an article that's read by 100,000 people, which you write something that's read by 100,000 people, you're in like the top 1/10 of all writers who've ever lived in human history. It's read by 100,000 people, we've earned $100. This is the internet. Everything is free. Now, again, I can sit there and rail about that and like, well, that's ridiculous. 100,000 people, you read something that's compelling, but 100,000 people made enough money to like buy gas twice for my car. And so have to understand that how drastically we were having to cut the rates that are being paid. Not because we're being mean, and not because we're running a sweatshop, but because the world has changed.
Right.
You're now selling salt water on the beach, you know, and so I've had to talk to many writers who were making their living by writing freelance articles and making a couple $1,000s a shot, and had to explain it's different now, you know, and it doesn't pay that much. So that's a hard conversation to have. But whose fault is it?
But do you think authors have that unrealistic expectation? In other words, I see newspapers, they're gone, right? And I look at musicians who are kind of having to go straight to fans or accept the fact that they're going to make, you know, I don't know how much they're making on an iTunes song, but it can't be more than a couple pennies. You know? And they're looking at that, right? So they've had to deal with it, and they're dealing with it now. Do you think authors are that last bastion of people that haven't been, not last, but one of the last bastions of people that still have an expectation, and I don't know, you're two authors, right? That have an expectation of, wait, there's a certain price that I should be paid for my work, versus I have to take what the world is going to give me now.
I had the advantage of growing up writing on the internet. I've been writing on the internet since 1998. So I've got 12 years of doing that. And then after that, and during the time, I wasn't paid anything for most of it, okay? And then I got a book deal. After years of giving away a lot of writing or having, you know, the ad revenue, you barely break even, okay? And I was working a full-time job, so I never, because I didn't aspire to be an author and didn't know fellow authors, whatever, I never understood what you could expect. I thought what I think a lot of people outside the industry think, that there's like one of two things happens to you. Either you're Stephen King, and you sell many copies, and you live in a giant house, or else you drink yourself to death, or broken alone. You know, they find you, you know, like months later, your family finds you in your den, and you've killed yourself. And
then your books can become popular. So unfair.
So I think there's people who have the unrealistic expectations, but I think it's not anybody's fault now, because even people that know the industry are finding the industry shifting beneath their feet. But again, let me reemphasize, because I hate getting bogged down in the conversation of how much less you're making per book or per whatever. If you're a writer and you're upset about the fact that whereas before something's going to be read by 200 people and now it may be read by 200,000 people, but you're not making as much money off of it. If you didn't get into writing because you had things to say to the world, then why are you doing it? It's a miserable way to make a living if you're doing it. If you thought, hey, this will be some quick cash here. write a bestseller. I would like a bigger house. I know how I'll do it. I'll write a best-selling novel. It can't start from that place in the first place, so.
In answer to you had the question about why publishing hasn't changed. I think any insular group, whether that's Washington, publishing, media industry, all tend to feed on each other. They don't tend to go out too far out into the real world and talk to folks and say, how do you want your content delivered? And so I think they sit there and they kind of have the same mantra over and over. We've always done it this way, it's worked. If we change, oh my God, we might not make that bottom line because publishing has been, the publishing industry has been consolidated so tightly that Holtzbrinck and the other big corporations want to see 20% profit out of an industry that standardly, if it had a good year, it made 10. And so taking risks makes them nervous because in the bottom line, if they take a risk and it fails, now, Steve Jobs is willing to take a risk. He's got a lot of money, but he's willing to take a risk because he knows that maybe 9 out of 10 of those, he might have one failure, but the other 9 are going to make a buttload of money. But publishing is a really conservative group. They're nervous because they've got to show a bottom line. And I think that's why. That's why I think I see most of the innovation is in the small presses and like the audio cast where people are actually, taping and putting out their own audio books, and you can listen to them for free. Oh my God, what a concept. And then going on to do contracts with New York. I think the more entrenched and old, and I don't want to use old boy network because there's a lot of old girls and young girls there who they feed on each other. And so being brave and bold is not rewarded.
Is there a question back there?
Yeah, I was going to say,
No, that's good.
thinking of this, do you think this might be something that would lead to, or make more important, having an agent for an author, someone who knows more about business, more about here's how you can connect with your readers, versus the writer not only having to know how to write, how to tell a good story, but then how to sell themselves to people, how to navigate all of this?
I would do a publicist more than an agent, because a lot of the agents aren't necessarily that media savvy.
Yeah.
You get yourself a good publicist
Well,
who's staying
I'm
up to date with stuff.
thinking that I'm wondering if it might not be something that, there isn't a term for yet specifically, that it's these people who have done this other stuff for writers before will take on, hopefully good ones, if writers figure out this is what they need, more of a role in helping them do that. Does that seem like something that you have seen anything of?
But I did what I did without an agent. I hired an agent out of desperation after St. Martin's called me, and I didn't understand the contract.
Like 12 pages long.
Because I was sure that they had slipped something in there that would let them never pay me. But I always thought of agents, and I have one now, but I always thought of agents as the really good agent is the one that has all the right friends and that goes to all the right cocktail parties or whatever, and they hobnob and they can pick up the phone and when their recommendation means something, when they say, look, this author actually is good. That role has to change because that is the point, is that marketing online and marketing through this new way by which people can connect with each other is it takes a different approach, but they'll come around. But in my now conversations with an actual publisher and doing this, I've run into so many people that are so frightened and confused by the internet or whatever. I think you've got to make sure you've got somebody who's savvy. And I would, if you wind up trying to find an agent or whatever, I would ask them what they know about the internet, and if they seem confused or upset by it, or they think of the internet as a threat to what they're doing,
We've run out of time, I think. Yes.
Anybody by any chance have a gray silver Nissan Altima?
No, I'd like one though.
Good. Well, this was running, so they.
Well, that means I could get it. That's why they locked the door.
But we are out of time.
We are out of time.
And thank you, even though Brandon wasn't able to be
Thanks,
here.
folks.
I hope Brandon still does.
Thanks for helping. I have free samples of my first book up here if you're dying to find out what I read.